So welcome to Powerless Penguins United Big Book Study. I'm pleased to welcome Mags, who's come along to carry on with the Big Book Study. Over to you, Mags.
Thank you so much, Laws, for your service, and everybody else in the background that does services at this meeting. My name is Mags. I'm an alcoholic, and drugs are part of my story. Also, I couldn't get enough of them in the end, because that's what kept the drink going. So like it says in there, we replace one addiction for the other. I never believed that was the case, and it turned out to be the case. Like everything that when we hear the truth or start to understand the truth about what addiction is and who we are and the impact it has on us. Over the last number of weeks, we've been deep into chapter 4, We Agnostics. Can't remember how many weeks we spent in there. But it's that treasure trove of a chapter that never stops giving up in getting us to take a different perspective on why we should come to believe in this power greater than ourselves. You might be sitting here this morning still not believing in this power greater than yourself. Well, that's okay. Because we're still in the midst of this very detailed discussion that started actually on page 20. And there's going to be a little turning point in the not too distant future, where you can kind of check in as to where you're at with all of this stuff. And I'll point that out to you when we get to that point. As those that have been coming to this week after week know, I always say that we grow where we're planted. So we stay in the part of the book that we're at. We study the part that we're at. We don't jump forward. We grow in the pages in which we're planted. Chapter 5, how it works, is so exceptionally significant in this program. Specifically, page 58, page 59, and halfway down page 60 are so exceptionally important in this program. And I cannot emphasize that enough. So up to this point, you know, you've understood everything about the common peril, that being the allergy that we have. We react completely and utterly abnormally, or I do anyway, completely and utterly abnormally to this really normal substance that is alcohol. My brother and sister don't react abnormally to alcohol. They're not alcoholics. I am. I'm a real alcoholic, that which is defined on page 21. That person who has lost all control of their drinking. We understand the physical allergy from the doctor's opinion. That is the common peril. We understand the common solution from page 17, that being the big book, that this is the great news, that this big book carries the solution. And what jumped out to me this morning when the reader read, you know, who is a CA member? That question, it's not, would I have partied with these people? Because let me tell you now, none of you guys would have wanted to party with me. Genuinely, you guys are all way too cool. I wasn't that cool. But the next question is, do these people have a solution then that can help me stay sober? Because on a Saturday morning, all we talk about is the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, where the solution can only be found, the program of action and the program of recovery. I heard somebody before the meeting say, oh, there's a different crowd of people here on a Saturday morning. And someone pointed out, oh yeah, it's a big book study. Yeah, sometimes that does bring a different crowd of people. I don't know why. But what we're immersed in is the solution. And when I say the only place that you can find the solution is the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. There is other literature available in the fellowships. There is other literature available. I read it all the time. But where I find out what I suffer from and how I can overcome it and how I maintain my spiritual condition for the rest of my life is from the 164 pages, nowhere else. And once I get the grounding and foundation in that, I can add to it in so many other ways. So it's important to understand that. Do these people have a solution that can help me stay sober? And it's my responsibility when anybody reaches out the hand for help to give them the solution, not to give them my opinion, not to give them my judgment, but to give them this solution, the common solution. That's what we're bound by in brotherly and harmonious action. Action being a really important word as well. We've gone through Bill's story, that personal story, or, the whole thing around, did I drink like that? Did I think like that? Did I feel like that? And can this program work for me too? You've worked through the 42 personal stories at the back of the book. You've taken this action. The first action from the big book is in the last paragraph in the preface, to read those personal stories and to establish whether you've drank like that, felt like that, thought like that. You've gone through, there is a solution that outlines the spiritual toolkit that's laid at our feet, those 36 spiritual principles. We've talked about being rocketed to the 4th dimension. We've talked about the fact that we've got no choice, no control, no power over the substances that we are addicted to. And that we need something else, that we need this power greater than ourselves. And we're about alcoholism. Chapter 3 goes into 4 beautiful stories, 4 different types of people. But they're all real alcoholics. The person that gave it up for a long time and then picked up after 25 years and was dead within 4. The person that did all of the steps up to step 11 and didn't complete step 12. And drank again because he failed to enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice with others. Because where I enlarge my spiritual life is by intensive work, one alcoholic with another. We talked about the jaywalker, the insanity, because that's what it is. The absolute and utter insanity of picking up that first drink. Using that once, thinking that we have the control and the power and the choice over it when we don't. Because by that stage, when you get to the jaywalker, you know that. But what we're going to come on to in today's reading is, if you know that and still don't have the ability to grasp it, then there's something inside you that needs to change. We go into We Agnostics, the treasure trove of example after example, enlightening moment after enlightening moment, why we should come to believe in this power greater than ourselves. We understand we have to have the continued willingness for the rest of our lives. We understand from the spiritual experience in page 567 into 68, the willingness, the honesty, the open-mindedness that is required for the rest of our lives. Those qualities are completely and utterly essential. They're completely and utterly indispensable. For the rest of my life, I have to be willing, honest, and open-minded. And thank God, every day from the bottom of my heart, that I've been given this life and these tools to be able to live a life of peace. To have a mind that is so settled that no matter what later vicissitude, as it says in We Agnostic, that big word that I find difficult to spell and to pronounce, no later negativity, no matter what enters my life, can knock me. I emphasize again and again and again, I do not fight alcohol one day at a time. It does not exist for me in any way, shape, or form. No drug do I fight one day at a time. In the rooms I was told, you'll be fighting alcohol for the rest of your life. One day at a time. But the one day at a time actually means that we are given the ability to live our life one day at a time. And that's what I have been given, the gift to be able to live my life one day at a time without any distraction. No matter what is going on in my life, all of the problems that I think I have in my mind, whilst I'm doing this stuff with you guys, like I feel as if I'm waiting on something happening. God's still working. God's already there. God's already sorting it. The power that is greater than me has me in a place where we're going to find out in the reading that we're doing now. It's important to go through all of that summary before we go into chapter 5, how it works. This part of the book, 58, 59, and halfway down 60, when you get to the third pertinent idea, see, God could and would if he were sought, is the part of the book that you will hear over and over and over and over and over again. And on that basis, this morning, more than ever before, please, I beg of you, like they're going to beg of you in this first page that we're going to go through, I beg of you, if you're returning, or if you've never stepped foot in these rooms before, or you have relapsed, or you might be having a bit of trickiness in the unmanageability of your life right now, I beg of you to really and truly use that set-aside prayer to ask God to help you set aside every single thing you think you know about this part of the book and your recovery and the 12 steps in order to have a new experience with God. This part of the book is either read verbatim without any thought. Rarely have we seen a person fail his 35 hour past. There are those who are constitutionally incapable of being themselves. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, with no thought or consideration given to the words. Because it's read over and over and over again, it's just like, oh, it's just that part of the book. Chapter 5, how it works. Anybody read that? Yeah, I'll put my hand. In the end, and I think I shared this right at the beginning of this book study, in the end, when I came into the rooms and sat and they would read, somebody would stand up and read chapter 5, how it works. It became like Charlie Brown's teacher. All I started to hear was wah, 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 wah. That's all I heard. Nobody actually explained to me what it meant. And because it was the only part of the book, every now and again they would have changed it to page 30 into 31, more about alcoholism. So they would have talked about, the progressive illness and sorry, I'm just looking out the window there and I've never seen a fatter pigeon out my window in my life. There's a big fat pigeon. It's huge. I got distracted. Oh my God. The cats will have a field day if they get that pigeon. Anyway, in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, every now and again they'd take another tact and they'd go to page 30, 31. That one where they've a progressive illness, where someone can reach that incomprehensible demoralization, and then they end it you could add to the list ad infinitum. Then they'd maybe rock it up a little bit and go to acceptance is the answer, page 417 in the personal stories. So I wasn't getting really a solution when I was listening. They were probably thinking they were giving me the solution. Of course they were, but I didn't understand what they were telling me. And see, that's personal story, page 417, acceptance is the answer. When they read that used to drive me to absolute and utter distraction. Because acceptance wasn't the answer for me. When I came into the rooms, I could not accept that I was sitting with you. I could not accept that I was an alcoholic. I could not accept that I had to fight alcohol one day at a time. I could not accept that I had a progressive illness. Yet people just told me to read page 417. That's your problem. Just accept it and get on with it. What are you talking about? Because the alcohol is my solution. The drugs are my solution. How can I accept that the solution that is helping me is the thing that you're telling me that I can't use? Explain that to me. And it wasn't until I got a sponsor, eventually, who did explain it to me. Now I understand what acceptance is. Now I understand. But for a newcomer coming in, we gotta give them the solution. Do these people have a solution that will help me stay sober? Think about that. When we're in the rooms, our responsibility in the fellowship is to talk about the solution. So in this period of time where I was hearing it either verbatim, read at a gazillion miles an hour, or I was listening to the wah, 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 there were so many important spiritual principles within this part of the book that I did not see, that held the answer. So let's go through it in a way that we have never read it before, like I do with every sponsee, like I do at every meeting. I'm setting aside every single thing I think I know every single time to have a new experience with God, so that something that I need to see in this moment, right here, right now, might filter in to answer some of the questions that are bugging me, that are ruminating around in my mind. Not only about my alcoholism, if you're still in active addiction, but about my life and where I am right now. Even though I've been away from alcohol and drugs for a period of time, a relatively short period of time in comparison to many, many other people, this still has answers for me. You can think you know this stuff already. Let's have a conversation about that. The not knowing is the gift. I didn't know what that meant either until I did. If you think you know, sometimes very quickly that can become a block to you seeing something. Family, friends, AA, sponsees, when I think I know, that's in my thinking, a movement in my thought process, a change in my perception, and that change in perception gives me the miracle. Because that's all a miracle is, a change in my perception. So how it works, the title is important. How it works. How the program works. And they open with a really hard-hitting paragraph. Listen to this first line. Rarely have we seen a person feel who has thoroughly followed our path. Like, that is magnificent. If you really tune into those words, rarely have we seen a person feel who has thoroughly followed our path. Important thing to remember here is thoroughly followed our path. We're not talking about all of the Tom, Dicks and Harrys sitting in the rooms across the world right now when they read this story. Because when I came into the rooms, I thought they were talking about all of the people in the rooms that have thoroughly followed their path, right? What they're saying here is rarely have we seen a person feel who has thoroughly followed our path, i.e. the people that wrote the book, i.e. the 164 pages. When I was sometimes sitting in the rooms here in the part of the world where I was living in, I was listening to thoroughly follow your path. When you're telling me that you fight alcohol one day at a time, that you're never going to overcome drinking, that you still have all of these resentments, that you still can't make a living, that you're still a prey to misery and depression. You're telling me that if I thoroughly follow your path, I'm going to be okay. I didn't want what they had in the rooms, because the rooms were where people were coming to dump their problems. They weren't coming to talk to me about the solution. What they're saying here is, if you follow what we have set out in this book, rarely will you fail. Rarely will you fail. You've heard me say it time and time and time again. How it works is the program. If you do the work, that word if is so conditional. If you do the work, it works. If you don't, it won't. That is my experience. I came into the rooms, in, out, shake it all about. That hokey dance that Lois always laughs about when I talk about it. In, out, shake it all about. I wasn't doing the work. Yet to the outside world and all my family, I was telling them, it's work for me. This fellowship, it's not working for me. They're not my type of people. No, they don't get me. In, out, shake it all about. No, I was the problem. I 100% was the problem. The reason being, I wasn't doing the work. I was coming in and hanging out in the meetings, meeting a few people, maybe going for a coffee with them, maybe not going for a coffee with them, because it was too good for them. Do you know, there's nothing that you could have taught me. Pointing at you, judging you. Yet there was a few people in there that were pointing to me to the solution. I chose not to hear it, because the majority voice of the not solution was drowning out those that had the solution. And this is why my home group in Belfast only ever talks about the big book, because it's the solution. You come into my home group, you get a consistent message, whether you like it or not. There might be some things in here, these myths that are going to be busted today about what this message actually is. So if you do the work, you'll rarely fail. Somebody, I know, because I did it myself. Somebody will tune into the word rarely and say, oh, well, it means that sometimes it doesn't work. Don't let your mind trick you. Don't let your ego trick you into saying, oh, well, rarely, out of every 99, there's one that won't get it. They give us the reason why those individuals fail. They go on to say, those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely, these words are important, completely give themselves to this simple program. Because this really and truly is a simple program. This program is not complicated. I complicated the back end out of it, trying to do it my way. My way didn't work. Everybody, that doesn't do it this way, following the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, is complicating it. It's a really simple program. It tells us that. Even in Bill's story, we're introduced to the fact that it's a simple program. He tells us it's simple. Page 14, simple, but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. Isn't that powerful? Simple, but not easy. It's not easy to go through this. But when you get a sponsor who takes you by the hand, it makes it easier. Simple, but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. I love that word. I must turn in all things to the Father of Light, another word for God who presides over us all. I must turn. Not you. It's not about everybody else in the room changes to fit with what I want. It's me that needs to turn all things to the Father of Light. Every single day, even in my life now, I have to turn all things to the Father of Light. Completely give themselves to this simple program. It's not the hokey cokey. Half in, half out. And it goes on to explain that even further when we get into the next couple of paragraphs. So, there are those who could not recover and who cannot completely give themselves this simple program, usually men and women, people, who, whatever you want to say, who are constitutionally incapable. And here's the thing that's really important, of being honest with themselves. Hear that loud and clear, people. Hear that loud and clear. Circle that word honest, underline it, asterisk it, highlight it. I do not know what else I can say to emphasize that word. Constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. Now, here's the myth that needs to be busted. This is not about honesty in regards to you've stolen some money. It's not the dishonesty about you've told lies to some people. It's not the dishonesty about, I don't know, you've had an affair with somebody else when you've been in a relationship. That's not the honesty that they're talking about here. So set aside every single thing you think you know about this honesty. What they are telling you here is that you're constitutionally incapable of being honest with yourself about the fact that you are a real alcoholic, that you are a real addict. That which is set out on page 21. That you're not being honest with your innermost self. That at some point in your drinking and using career, you have lost all control. That you're not being honest with your innermost self, that you can't pick up one drink or use on one occasion. That you are not being honest with yourself, that you know that you've lost all power, choice and control. That you are not being honest with yourself, that to pick up one drink and to use one time is absolute and utter insanity. That's what you've got to get honest about. And it's not about getting honest and coming into this room. Well, it is to a large degree, but when I come into the rooms and say, oh, hi, I'm Mags, I'm an alcoholic. So, oh yeah, I'm just hanging out with you guys because you have told me to say this, hands up, I'm Mags, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict. I'm saying it out loud to you guys because it makes me feel as if I fit in. But am I being really constitutionally honest with myself that I actually am? Because if you're just saying it out loud and think you're going to get this honesty through osmosis of saying it out loud time and time again, you're not doing the work and you're just showing up to meetings and you're not taking a service position and you haven't got a sponsor and you're going home again. What's that good for you? What's that going to change? It's important to attend the meetings. Of course it is. It's important to get the service position. Absolutely it is. That's part of being in the body of those 36 spiritual principles, right in the middle of that triangle: recovery, unity, and service. It's all important stuff. But what it's saying here is this simple program, you're not getting a grip of it because you're not getting honest with yourself. If you've been relapsing time and time and time again like I did, that doesn't have to be part of your recovery. It was part of mine. But what I've come to realize is that it doesn't have to be part of anybody's life. My relapsing was a lack of recovery. It wasn't recovery. That's the bit that I had to get honest with myself. I used to come back into the rooms and say, oh God, I've had a slip. No, you didn't. You relapsed, full-blown relapse. It was insanity. You picked up again. The delusion that I was telling myself, the delusion that it was just a little slip. No, get honest, Mags. You're insane. you know you can pick up a drink. Let's talk about that honestly. Let's talk about that. Let's not just sweep it aside as a slip, because that then gives me the permission to keep on slipping. And let me tell you now, I was slipping and sliding like Bambi on ice. If you had seen me at some points in my drinking career, coming in and out of the rooms, shaking like a baby dog, that being a puppy. Don't know why I said baby dog. What's that all about? A baby dog. Anyway, you get my drift. But I was giving myself permission that this was okay. Living in the delusion and the illusion that I was different. No. It's not true. And, you know, they know us. They give us this little bit of empathy. There are such unfortunates. Of course there are. I was one of them. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. Yes. I was born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping, in the first instance, grasping and developing. Think of that word. Developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. So, when I came into the rooms, I was 100% incapable of grasping what this was all about. And the reason why was because nobody was giving me the solution in the first instance. I was incapable then, when I got a sponsor, of grasping this. When my sponsor approached me and started to give me the solution, I was incapable of grasping what he was sharing with me because I didn't have the ability to set aside every single thing I thought I knew. Because what I knew was my savior, whereas quite the opposite was happening. What I thought I knew was going to kill me. And it wasn't until I was brought to the point of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization that I had no other option than to accept the spiritual help. So page 30 talks about the demoralization. I had no other option than to accept the spiritual help, is outlined on page 25. Because for the first lot of months when I was in the fellowship, I was doing what it said on page 25, the last paragraph. I was blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation and continuing to live a life of misery, continuing to fight alcohol one day at a time, picking up the drugs so that I could drink even more. So the thread that runs through the book from the front cover page up to this point is so important, because what you're starting to understand is the context of what they're telling us here in chapter 5, how it works. Chapter 5, how it works, won't mean anything in real terms unless you've done everything up to this point as part of this detailed discussion that started on page 20. Now, this might sound all really, really complicated, but it's not. The only reason why I know this stuff is because I give it away to other people. The only reason why I know this stuff is because my sponsor gave it to me. I didn't understand any of this until I started sponsoring other people. And the same will be for you. So I couldn't grasp it. And I wasn't able to develop a manner of living which demands the rigorous honesty. When I was in the denial, I couldn't accept it. Acceptance in the beginning wasn't the answer for me. I couldn't accept it. I did everything to fight against it. And it's the rigorous honesty about the fact that I know that I am an alcoholic, that I am different from other people, that I have this allergy that manifests itself in the phenomenon of craving, that I can't pick up that first drink, that I feel as if I've got this sense of ease and comfort when I pick up the first drink, but it was only a sense, it's not real. I've got to break the cycle. And how do I break the cycle? Well, there's a number of things that I need to do, as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I stopped the drinking, I got the mental obsession, this preoccupation with this totally and utterly unreasonable idea that I can pick up one drink. What do I do about the mental obsession? I have to have something else in place. I've got no mental defense against the first drink. That's why I need to move into coming to believe in this power greater than myself. That's the thread that runs the way through. If you're sitting in meetings listening to chapter 5, how it works, the first 2.5 pages, you ain't going to get the solution with that alone. This is the myth that needs to be busted. Page 32, it tells us and more about alcoholism. It will not take long for you to decide whether you are one of us or not if you are honest with yourself about it. Do you see the theme that's running right through? Honest with yourself. If you're sitting here now and you're in the depths of this alcohol thing, or you're in the depths of this drug thing, and you want to stop, get honest with yourself. Because deep down within, you know. It goes on to talk about is their chances are less than average. If I can't be honest with myself, of course, my opportunity to recover is going to be less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders. But here's the thing. Many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. There's that word again. Here's the myth that needs to be busted. I work with many, many, many people, bringing them through the book, page by page, line by line. The number doesn't matter. But I work with many people who have all sorts of everything going on in their life. Like the mental health scenario in this world at this time, the spectrum is wide and deep. We've got those individuals that have special needs, maybe even on an autistic spectrum, wide and deep. Those mental health conditions, those special needs conditions are not what makes you an alcoholic. I have worked with many people who have all sorts of mental health. You know, I'm not going to say them on here because they're outside issues. I'm not going to say them on this platform. You know what I'm talking about. Somebody will come to me and say, oh, well, the thing about it is I've got da 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 da, and I'm like, right, okay, well, that's interesting. That's interesting to know. Thanks for letting me know that. But that's got nothing to do with me. Do you want to just open your big book here? Because I'm here to help you with your alcoholism. And what you'll find is when we sort the alcohol problem, some of those diagnoses that have been given by GPs and specialists and counsellors and turn out not to exist. Or turn out to be less of an issue when the alcohol thing has been removed, when the drug thing has been removed. Because I hasten to add, you know, like it says on page 20, and we never, page 18, these psychiatrists, these counsellors and the doctors, we never give them a first shout. They can't help us. It tells us that on page 18. The person that can is that person is armed with the facts about themselves. That being the ex-problem drinker who's had this solution. Interesting that when you remove the drink and drug thing, all the other mental health issues and so on dissipate or are removed. Because in our lack of honesty with the medical professionals, they have been given us the solution of other medication that hasn't been working anyway, because we're topping up with the alcohol and the drugs that we're using. So one cancels out the other. I'm going to the doctors to get an antidepressant because I'm depressed, and I'm putting alcohol on top of it, which is a depressant. Like, it's insane. It doesn't make any sense. Now, I hasten to add here, I ain't a doctor. I ain't a medical professional. That's why all of that outside stuff has got sweet nothing to do with me. I don't get involved in my sponsee's medical situation, other than if they're drinking and they're in trouble, get to A&E. If you're drinking and you're in trouble, see the medical professional. If you're drinking and you're in trouble and you need help, call the police. You know, I do not pass comment. I do not get involved. But what it's saying here is, irrespective of your degree of emotional and mental disorders, you still can recover if you have the capacity to be honest with yourself about your drinking and using. So if you're sitting in this room and you think, oh, it's that mental health condition that the doctor told me that I had, it's not a problem. Yes, it could be 100%, but what's exacerbating the problem could be the alcohol and the drugs. So let's talk about that. Let's get you into the solution. Because like we hear at the bottom of page 13 in Bill's story, this is a program that will solve all your problems. The elimination of our drinking, like it says on page 19, the elimination of our drinking was but the beginning. Interesting little paragraph that, isn't it? Don't know whether anybody will have got that from the rooms, and if you have, fair play, fair play, fair play. This is all about honesty, deep down within. This is an interesting one too. Our stories disclose in a general way what we were like, what happened, and what we are like now. The stories that they're talking about here are not the stories of every Tom, Dick and Harry sitting in the rooms. What they're referring to here is the personal stories outlined at the back of the book and Bill's story. Their stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. A lot of the stories that I hear in the rooms do disclose in a general way what we were like, what happened, and what they're like now. But a lot of those stories don't share with me the solution. A lot of those stories that I have heard don't talk about getting a sponsor, working the steps like the desperation of a drowning man, and having a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. I'm not telling you any lies, people. When I go into the rooms, some of the rooms in Belfast, I don't hear anything about overcoming alcohol. All I hear is the problems. I can't live with that. You know, I'm there to carry the solution when I go into those rooms. And let me tell you now, I carry no judgment and I carry no opinion on those people, because if it wasn't for those people, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you right now. I am so grateful for what they did for me, how they took me by the hand and got me to my home group. Something that those people did. They loved me at my worst. They knew what to do. Somehow or other, they knew what that they had to do. You know, by the grace of God, somebody was put in front of me who did have the solution. So genuinely no judgment or no opinion. All I know is what I have to do when I go into those rooms. If everybody else is talking about everything else but Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book, then I've got to bring that into that meeting. That's my responsibility. And I take that very seriously. And I really don't care what people have to say about me. So know that the stories are those that they're talking about at the back of the book. And here's the thing. If, that really conditional word, if you have decided that you want what we have and are willing, there's that word again. So we've talked about the honesty. We're not talking about the willingness. We're talking about those completely and utterly indispensable, essential requirements that are set out in the Spirit Experience at the back of the book. So if you've decided that you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, those words are important, willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. Ready, that word means immediate use. You are immediately ready for use to take the certain steps. Okay? People will say to me all the time, oh, Mags, I want what you have. And I'm looking at them going, well, what do you think it is that I have? I don't know what you're looking at. I don't know what you're hearing. But if you want what I have, let me tell you, you've got to do what I do. And if you want to see what we do, come walk alongside us. Come see what we do. Come see what we do every single day, our daily reprieve. Come see the service. Come see what we do to help the still suffering alcoholic. Come see what we do with intensive work, one alcoholic with another. Come see what we do every day, 10, 11 and 12. Come see what we do with meetings. Come see what we do with public information and working in hospitals and working in prisons. You want to be what I am? You want to do what I do? Then God love you if you want to be what I am, because I don't even want to be what I am sometimes. But you get my drift. And I'm not talking from a place of egoism here. I'm just telling you a random points. If you want to have what we have, you've got to do what we do. And I know there's so many people on this screen that do this stuff. You know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know what we're talking about, then come to the party, come join it. Let us show you. At some of these we balked. Yeah, some of these we balked. It's like, I don't know, what analogy can I use here? When you watch cricket, because I love cricket, when you watch cricket and the bowler runs up that green or whatever it's called, he runs up the grass and gets to the wee bits, the wee strip. That bit, the bowler runs really, really fast and he goes to throw that wee red ball. And then he stops kind of because he hasn't got enough pace, or his arm hasn't gone round enough to fire the ball at the speed at which it needs to get the batsman out. He kind of runs up and then slows down and then stops. He's balking. So you might have had a good old run up the steps right now. You might have had a good old run with your sponsor up the step 1 and step 2. You're getting a little bit queasy because you're moving into step 3 right now. In the next couple of weeks through this study, we're going to be moving into step 3. You stood on that bridge of reason. You're okay. You've been away from drugs and alcohol for a period of like 60 days or something. You've had a good old run up that bridge of reason and you're thinking, do you know what? I'm cool as a cucumber where I am. Grand. I'm just going to stand here because I don't know whether I really need that step 3. The reality of it is, if you're honest with yourself, you're balking. At some of these we balked because here's what's happening. We thought we could find an easier, softer way. People, let me tell you, to have a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps is the easier, softer way. You only think that you can find an easier, softer way. Oh, please, today, make the decision. You're not going to find an easier, softer way. You are going to exhaust yourself to high heaven trying to find an easier, softer way when it's set out here in 164 pages. And within a couple of months, you can feel the difference. Within a couple of months, you'll stop fighting it. Within a couple of months, if not even before that, the mental obsession will disappear. The problem will be removed. So this is the easier, softer way. So we thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. They're telling us, the first 100 wrote that book, they could not find it. And I'm telling you from bitter experience, I could not find an easier, softer way until I found this. Here's the second time in the big book where they beg of us. They are so convinced by this solution. They are begging us with all the earnestness at our command. We beg of you to be fearless. There's that little word again, the little nod, fearless. So that's the third time we've heard it in the book in the matter of a few pages. We beg of you to be fearless, not fearful. There's nothing to be afraid of. Be fearless. And third, from the very start. We're getting into the action now, people. You think you've had enough up to this point? We're getting into the action. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the pace comes up. This is where we get into the detail. This is where we get into the steps in more detail than we've done previously. Some of us have tried. This is so incredibly important. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas. You might be sitting here thinking, well, last time I did this. Get rid of that thought. It's an old idea. Some of us have held on to our old ideas, and what has happened? The result was nil. Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Until we let go. Absolutely. If there's anything that you're holding on to, get the message here. The result is nil until you let go. Absolutely. They couldn't be clearer. The words that they use in chapter 5, how it works in these specific pages, is laser precision. They have chosen these words for a reason. If you're holding on to any of your old ideas, at 7:45 this morning when I logged on here, at 7:50 this morning when I logged on here, the thoughts that I was having there is an old idea. I've got to let go of it. What I'm bringing brought into is now. And we're going to go on to talk about that. Let go, absolutely. It doesn't mean just hold on to a little bit. No, because the result will be no. Because here's the thing. Remember this. With all your might, let this sink in. Remember that you deal with alcohol, drugs, cunning, baffling, powerful. Those substances are so sly. Baffling means to be cut off from the light. They cut you off from the light. And they have more power than anything else on this planet if you be a real alcoholic. Cunning, baffling, powerful. When they say these words in the room, they just roll all over it like ice cream melting on jelly. They just roll over it. But think about those words. Cunning, sly, devious, a subtle foe is what it's called later on. Baffling. It does not want you to see the light. It does not want you to see the answer. It would rather hold you in a state of illusion, delusion. And so powerful it can consume your life and everything in it. That's what you're dealing with. Without help, it is too much for us. You cannot do this by yourself. But here's the thing. But there is one, capitalized, another one for God. There is one. There's only one. There is one who has all power. Power, as they say elsewhere. But there is one who has all power. Not a little bit, not an if, not a but, not a maybe. Who has all power. That word power meaning strength. That one is God. May you find him now. 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 In every single second, millisecond of the day, you can find that one now. We've got to think about that over the next week. There is one who has all the power, and you have access to it at any given millisecond of the day to enable you to let go. Absolutely. To get rigorously honest with yourself that you are one of us. So let go of the life that you have now to enable you to have access to the one that's waiting for you. It's there for the taking if you truly want it. I'll leave it at that, loves.